Thank you. Do we have a new intercom?
Yes, so.
Okay. All right. I'll call this meeting of the Durham Board of Selectmen to order on March 15th, rescheduled from our normal date due to the snowstorm. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, all right, so we do have a quorum of 4 members. Selectman Bolia is excused tonight. Any amendments to the agenda from anyone? No. Okay. Anybody here for public comment? If you are, have a seat at the table and state your name and the street you live on and say what you have to say.
Can that be like later or does it have to be now?
No, it has to be now. Yep.
My name is Linda Calendar. I have property on Burnaround Pond Road. And I have a question, I guess, about the resource protection. I thought it was going to be, according to the handouts, we were given 2 different parts. One to give relief to some landowners, along with putting other land in, and then part B. And I just this evening looked at the website and all of a sudden seemed to have morphed into one question again.
Yep, it has. And I should say, yeah, happy to answer your question because it's a very pertinent thing, but public comment is, it's not a like open discussion forum. It's like you say your piece and that's it. But in this case, but there are exceptions, and this would be one of them. So yes, the planning board at a meeting the night after the last select board meeting did change their recommendation. And I think there'll be more. You'll hear more about this when the board discusses voting on the final version of the warrant to send to town meeting. That it was creating more confusion than. The idea was to help make it easier, and it was actually making it more confusing. And there's both on the part of the public and even in the planning board meeting the night after. I was at that meeting along with Joe and 2 other select board members were there and the planning board. And at one point we kind of started to say, the 10 people in town that are probably most familiar with this issue are confused by it and talking in circles around it. What is that going to look like on town floor? And so the recommendation from the planning board is to go with a 1 question, and that question will ask, essentially it's going to ask, does the town want to put into the ordinance text the criteria for resource protection that the town approved as part of the comprehensive plan? Yes or no? And so with that's the recommendation from the planning board. And tonight the board will discuss whether we agree with that or not, or whether we would go against that recommendation.
So you still have that option. Okay, so my comment would be, it just seems like it were 2 separate issues. One is to right or wrong, and the other is to possibly wrong, a bunch of people or not, so.
Yep.
Which,
Yes, thank you.
The other comment I would have is that when you present this sort of stuff to the voters, I wonder if the folks in town really understand the scope, of what's being proposed here. I mean, it was mentioned at one of the meetings by someone on the conservation committee that, it's about equal, what's coming out of resource and what's going back in is about the same. If you look at the maps, that is not what I see. It looks like, a little bit's coming out, and rightfully could, and then a ton, of green light stuff going in. And I have a feeling a lot of fair-minded people in town might say, whoa, that's quite a lot. And the maps on that topic too. I don't know that they all seem to represent really the actuality. And if you walk the land, and it just makes sense. It's a little difficult. It's almost like it needs to be a little more clear before people, it's going to affect a lot of lives.
Okay, thank you. Any other people here for public comment? Because the only other place where we have other than board members speaking is on the agenda, there's a discussion with regard to the softball field. So if you're here to say your piece about something other than that, now is the time.
Joe Roy, Pinkham Brook Road. As you all probably expect, my public comment is just to consider accepting the planning board's recommendation as discussed at their last meeting and put forward. So that's all I have today. And I just want to also just thank the planning board and select board for the process and the way it's gone this year and the ample opportunity for everyone to ask questions and stuff like that. I know a lot of people from town have really appreciated that, and win, lose, or draw. And I think everyone has had the opportunity a little bit more this year to give feedback. And I know that I've heard a lot of really positive stuff about this board and the planning board because of that. So a rare compliment for the select board from a constituent. So.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, then public comment portion is closed. We'll move on to agenda item 4. And this is about use of the ball fields behind the Eureka Center. And by that, what has historically been the girls softball field. And right now, we have 2 organizations that are both making proposals to, in essence, have use of that field. I think, the board's typical practice is very rarely, if ever, would we be presented with something and vote on it in the same meeting. I think so. Tonight will be to hear from people representing both proposals. The board has an opportunity to ask questions. There might be some further information we might ask for from one or both of the proposing parties, and we'll see where it goes. But I think what people should not expect is a vote from the board tonight on the final resolution of what would happen with that field for this year. So I think just for no other reason than that's the order that they're on the agenda, is that I think I would invite Mike Clark from Durham Youth Baseball to come up, and I would kind of take us through your proposal and what you're hoping to see happen, and then board members can ask questions.
Sure.
And then we'll do the same thing with the next proposal.
Yeah, no, thanks for the time tonight. Michael Clark, for those of you that don't know me, I've been involved with Durham Youth Baseball for 10 years now. Recently president as of this year. So Durham Baseball has been around for a long time. Like I said, I've been involved for 10 years, whether it be a board member or a coach. And one of the biggest challenges that we've had as an organization is field space or use of fields. We've always worked around with the RSU and the school field here with the girls softball team, and working around them and having use of the school field. With softball in the town, having had a lease on the existing field that the town has. And I understand there's been some changes with softball. I think Dave Stewart is here tonight and is willing to, kind of talk about that if he could. I believe he's the one that had the lease on the field. But what Durham Baseball would love to have the opportunity to do would be to take over the lease on that field for the town. And basically take over the maintenance, as well as making some upgrades to that field as well. So I think it looks like you guys all have copies. I have extras if anybody needs them. But really what we kind of laid out here is, initially for this year, our season is starting up very soon here with scheduling for games and so forth, starting up in just a couple weeks here at the beginning of April. So, any upgrades this year, I think might be for, some things that we could do pretty easy, as far as replacing some things within the dugout, metal fencing over the dugout facing to kind of prevent injury. I think right now there's some kind of loose netting up there that I saw just kind of flapping in the breeze as I just drove by here. So, preventing injury from foul balls and things like that, as well as replacing any wood rot that might be there on those dugouts, repainting, things of that nature. Resurfacing the infield. What we'd like to do in the fall, if possible, would be to reloam, reseed the outfield there. I know water might be a bit of an issue, so we have to figure out, I guess, kind of a water source for watering that and seed. But that's something that we could certainly discuss. Providing porta potty for the league, obviously, while the season is in use, on us as well. And then kind of longer term, looking out, whether it be, again, depending upon what the town might allow us to do in regards to the fence, if it was used for baseball use, maybe backing up that fence, making the field a little bit bigger for some of the older kids to be able to play on there. And then, like I said, just kind of maintaining the field, the mowing, maintenance, resurfacing, things of that nature. Those would kind of be, I think, some of the big things that we would really be looking to do. The infield and so forth be resurfaced on an annual basis. But just really kind of upgrading and maintaining that field to make it a nice place for kids to be able to have a place to play ball. We had last year, I think we had 120 or 130 kids in our league from T-ball through age 12. And again, everything was done through sharing of the RSU field. And I know some of you on this board have had kids in the league. I know the struggle it's been for practice time and things of that nature. So, I know the other organization that's here tonight, does have some Durham kids in their league. I know that they're not, a Durham-based league. We are 100% Durham families and kids and Durham taxpayers. And I think that is certainly important to consider. I will say, I believe the other organization does also have a field of their own in Freeport, as well as use of Freeport Middle School and also use of Durham Community School now as well. So, we're really limited to the space that we have. So I think it's really important if we want our kids to continue to play in Durham to have this space here. Dave, would you like to?
Yeah, come on up, Dave. Yeah, sure.
Hi, everyone. I know a lot of you know me, Dave Stewart. I've been involved in Durham softball for the last 14 years, coaching, president of the league, booster club president, a lot of things. And then some things have changed this year. Another group came in and was looking to obtain players, coaches, and I'm not in it for the conflict. I don't have any kids. Never had any kids. I have no skin in this game. And I wasn't looking for a fight for players and sponsors and fields, any of it. I've always been the softball guy, but now I'm going to be the Durham guy and throw my support behind Durham baseball. I do have a receipt from 2018 for a 7-year lease that we took on with you. I would like to see a lease brought up and given to Durham baseball, or if not, I know a lot of you know me. You've had daughters that played for me, you coached for me. Even if you wanted to give me the power and authority to sublet that lease till the end of it, I would take that on, providing they have insurance, sexual abuse waivers, everything, and we could treat the lease that way. I'll sublet to Durham baseball. If you don't feel the need or want to make a decision in this matter and you want to lay it on my hands, I'll take it. I'm sure there's people in this room, people watching this that are surprised that I'm sitting here doing this right now because I've been the Durham softball guy. I've had other towns come and sit in my meetings and ask to join, and I said, what's it going to be called? It's not going to be Durham softball, is it? And I'm at the point where I can't do it anymore. But I think Durham baseball, I've had this lease. I've turned them away time and time and time again because you can't have more than one program share that field. If you have 60 girls and 5 teams, that's every night of the week. It just isn't practical any other way. I'll throw up more support behind them, that if you let me sublet to them or you choose to let Durham softball take on that lease, all shelving, trash materials, field care, maintenance equipment, I'll donate right to them. They'll have it, they'll be off and running, and they'll be ready to keep a Durham program going, which is what I'm hoping for.
With regard to the lease, I don't think it's a matter of whether the board would allow it or not. I think that would be dictated by whatever language is in the lease, right? So I don't know. I have two questions about the lease, and we'd have to get a copy and see what it actually says. One, I don't know if there's language in there that allows whoever
Sublet,
signed the lease to
right.
sublet it.
Right.
And I don't know if the lease was to you as a person or to Durham softball as an
To
organization.
an entity, I was here with Zach Kazan, and it was actually to Durham Booster Club.
Right.
And then we changed our name and purpose with the state to Durham softball.
So I think I'm not a lawyer, but my initial reaction would be that the lease was with an entity that no longer exists, therefore there is no longer a lease.
Well, we changed our name and purpose with the state is basically what we did. It's still the same entity.
The entity still exists?
Formerly known as- Yeah, I still have a 501c with the state.
Okay, all right, so the entity still exists.
Yeah.
It may not be active,
Yeah, it is.
but it exists, okay.
Yeah, well, it was active up until January.
Okay.
And now I'm looking
All right.
to avoid conflict.
Yeah, no,
And-
but I'm only looking to
No, my
make
lease-
sure that whatever we do is
Yep, my 501c with the state.
in
is
accordance, yeah, so that might answer that question, but then it's still does the lease allow for
Right.
a sublet? And if there's not language in there allowing that, then the board would probably need to draw up a new lease, I would think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said,
And
I'm not a lawyer.
I'd like to ask for your consideration to give it to Durham baseball. That's my purpose here today.
Any other, you guys have any questions on this proposal?
So how does the maintenance work today on that? Well, how has it worked in the past?
The town has mowed the outfield in the past. Infield, I've used Jay Emerson, and he comes every year and he resurfaces the field and takes care of that part of things. We also maintain the dugouts and things like that. Usually we get someone who's doing like work for credit for school, and they'll paint the dugouts and stuff like that. Usually it's a group effort of parents and volunteers that maintain the dugouts and the field.
Mike, currently under your program, how many kids, athletes do you have currently in your program?
Well, so our registrations are open through the end of the month, so we don't have final numbers for this year yet. But last year, we were, like I said, I think around 120. We had 5 T-ball teams. We had 2 teams in each of our older age group levels, which is rookies, which is 7 and 8. 2 teams of minors, which is ages 9 and 10, and 2 full teams of majors, which was 11 and 12. So, those older groups alone, I mean, between those 6 teams was probably 70, 75 kids, and then, around 50 or so T-ballers last year. And again, to Dave's point around, sharing, I mean, if you got that many teams, you're trying to have practices and things like that, I mean, it would be tough. 5 or 6 nights a week between games, practices, and that's just kind of the thing that we've not really been able to have as an organization is a consistent place that we could go without having to work around somebody else's schedule to be able to give these kids the practice time and field time that they deserve. So it would be nice for the kids to have that.
Yeah, and to that as well, I know other communities are joining together to make a new program or grow a program. And there are other facilities, Freeport Pownell, places like this. This isn't the RSU. This is the town of Durham field, town of Durham property, town of Durham program.
Who's going to use the field this year?
I'm hoping these guys.
But if they don't, then nobody will?
Well,
The next
yes.
I was looking for a.
Well, we have 2 proposals looking to use it, so
Right.
somebody's gonna end up.
Yeah, if it's
Well, but if there's a lease, if you're not using it,
I think that's an open question.
well,
But if there is, you're right.
if there's a lease, then
I'd
You're
be
not
willing
gonna be
to
using
I'd
it.
be willing to forego it for them. Yeah, for Durham softball, or for Durham
If
baseball.
there's a lease that gives a leaseholder power to sublet, It's not even our decision.
Right.
It's the leaseholder's decision.
You know, even if the lease isn't in, you know, it gives him the right to sublet, he can still operate. He can still grant that right of use to that. He'd be the key holder, for lack of better words, to that if he in fact has a valid lease.
Yeah, that might be the case. So I think regardless, it's going to require a review of the
Right,
lease
agreed.
and to see where
The,
that stands.
the receipt is dated 4/12/18. If that helps
Yeah, it's
you
not
guys
just
at all.
about the
Oh, I know,
the
just
amount.
for looking
it's
back
the
at the paperwork,
language,
right.
it's what the specific language is in there. But, so.
Where's Durham Youth Baseball been playing the last bunch of years?
So we've used the school field, the school softball field, Saturdays when school obviously doesn't have games. And we've tried to coordinate practices around the girls softball schedule, evenings after they are done practice or nights that they don't have games. We would try to get, 1 weeknight game up there a week, usually on a day that they're either away game or something like that. But our T-ball kids, our ages 4 to 6, historically, last year they used kind of the grass area off the soccer field here at the school. And then prior to that, for many years, Shiloh Chapel let us use their field over there. But yeah, so our T-ball kids have never been able to have the experience of being on an actual baseball field, which would be really nice. They've kind of been running around in tick covered fields.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, we've been able to make do with what we've had. It hasn't been ideal, and our organization has grown numbers wise a lot in the 10 years that I've been here in town, been involved with the organization, and I don't feel like we ever kind of conflicted with Dave around the use of that field, or we understood that there was a lease there, and we worked with what we had and what we could, and but it is it's going to be tougher for us this year with Freeport or what's now Tri-Town. Like I said, they've already gotten approval to use the Durham school softball field as well, which was never the case before. It was always Durham baseball and school. So having to try to split that between 3 organizations now, when you count the school, that squeezes us even more for opportunity and field space. My board is here as well. I don't want to put any of them on the spot, but I don't know if you guys have anything to say or add. If they're open to that, I don't know if you guys allow.
Yeah, I
that or
think
not.
this was kind of a workshop type thing. So
Thank you.
I'm Chris Sanamon. I was previous president. Just wanted to sit down and see if you had any questions for me with Mike here. I let Mike kind of run this since I'm helping out part of the board this year. All support, trying to get these guys up and running. That way I could step aside because I've been doing it quite a while. Been through 4 different presidents before me. So any questions for me?
I actually did have a question about, you said like in some age groups, you said you had like 2 teams. So do you play other towns so it's not just the same 2 teams playing each other?
Right.
all the time?
No.
Okay.
So yeah, we play like Brunswick, Bath. Last year Richmond was Cassis. So yeah, kind of surrounding towns that are part of the Caliber Kid Baseball League.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Yeah, if we based everything off playing ourselves, we wouldn't have any field time for the other teams. So you have to travel and you have to split that up,
Yeah.
especially working around the school softball team.
Yeah.
When they have games, nobody goes to the field. When they have practice, we are allowed to get on after they're done.
Yeah.
So we work around that type of thing, but makes it difficult.
That's good. All right. I think, a follow-up question might come to light based upon other discussions, but I think the plan would be, we'll kind of digest this and give people a chance to make comments at the next board meeting on the 28th as well, and 28th, right?
Yeah.
And I would anticipate probably some sort of a vote then to give us a chance to check out the lease terms and stuff too. So, Okay,
All right.
great,
Great.
thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Next name I have on the agenda is Matt Walsh from the Tri-Town Little League to talk about their proposal.
Hey, how you doing? Yep, I'm Matt Walsh. I represent Tri-Town Little League and the players for the softball side. I'm VP of softball as of last year, so I'm kind of stepping into this new. It's a bit of a challenge. So you guys got my proposal there. Honestly, I don't have a lot of different items to add to Mike's presentation. I mean, taking care of the fields, we would do very similar things. I mentioned it in there. I'm not going to rehash it. We take care of the field. We do spring and fall maintenance on the fields over at Hunter Road. We put a lot of money into them, a lot of time, a lot of volunteer hours. Taking care of the fields, I think we have a good handle on. If you have any questions around that, I can go into it a little bit more. So last year we ran. I gotta remember. Hang on a second. We basically had 70% growth this year with the softball side of Durham coming over, and I know that was a whole different piece that we can talk about, but I think I'm here to represent the Durham players that came over to Tri-Town. They grew up playing on this field, parents watching them, and I think those girls should have an opportunity to play on that field no matter what organization they're playing for, right? They're Durham kids. It's a Durham field, right? It's not a Durham team field, it's a Durham player field. And that's that's really what I'm here for, is just to support them and the parents to be able to play there. Our organization, or the softball side, is made up of 45% Durham players right now. So we have Pownell players, we have Freeport players. We have one, so talking about fields, I just want to correct something here. Last I heard from Peter Wagner, the RSU coordinator, the Durham softball field is not reserved. It was originally reserved. We reached out to him. We asked if it was available back in February. He said, yep, nobody's reserved it. We reserved it. Once, I think, Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you reached out to Peter. Peter then released that lease and basically said to the two organizations, you guys work it out. Let me know what you figure out. So that's where it stands. So it's not reserved at the moment. We do have other fields, but we also have 300 kids. We're a larger organization, overall baseball and softball, right? So we have more fields, we have more kids.
How many total fields? I didn't mean to cut you off, but how many total fields do you have?
So there's 3 over at Hunter Road. Yep, we got middle school, Falmouth Middle School.
Okay.
Freeport Middle School. There is 2 other fields. Pownell Elementary Field, which I don't know if you've been over there, is not really a field. It's basically grass, and then Pownell Road Field. But those are, town fields. They're not for us. We can go out and reserve them if we want to, just like anybody else can, I believe. That's my understanding.
So 5?
About 5.
That sound right?
Yeah. So with our growth on the baseball and softball side, we would be in the same situation where T-ball is going to be playing on grass. It's the way it is with the shortage of fields in the 3 towns. So, yeah, I mean, any questions on that part yet?
So so with the games that would be played here.
Yeah.
Would it? So I'm assuming that Durham kids are mixed in with the other kids, and there aren't
Absolutely.
like Durham specific teams.
We like to mix them in because
So some of their games might be here, but some would be in Freeport or other towns. as
other
well.
towns. Yep, softball players, other towns in Little League.
Okay.
Yep. Other towns would be coming to Durham for home games. Yep. Could be Yarmouth, Cumberland.
Yeah.
Could be all of them. Yeah. Yeah. I think, there was I just want to make sure that the girls have a chance to play on the field that they grew up playing on. That's really why.
So how's the field reservation thing work? Because, some of the fields, both, everybody's mentioned are RSU 5 fields versus town-owned fields. So what's the difference in reserving the town-owned, meaning, for this, I know the RSU usually has some strict guidelines around, use of the facilities. So what's the difference between the ability to reserve those fields?
It's a bit convoluted, and I don't think I can speak very well to it. I can research it and maybe have somebody that's a little bit more knowledgeable in the difference between the two. I know that, reaching out to Peter Wagner, he works with the Durham School regarding the softball field and the baseball field. And I know the softball field was available, and that's why he reserved it for us. I can figure out more. I'm not fluent in that.
Essentially, RSU fields get reserved through the RSU office, and the town fields get reserved through the Freeport town office. It's not a
No,
Not a single booking,
I realize. So there's
It's definitely convoluted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it used to be many years ago that we would to use this field, we would go through basically DCS. It's been the last probably 3-4 years where you had to get into this reservation thing with the RSU 5 fields.
For the softball field?
For the softball
They
field.
centralized all
They
the-
centralized.
I see.
Which is really good. I mean, in some capacity, but it does also it has limited in the past kids of this town for having opportunities to play on this field.
Yeah.
In particular, I can remember even last year and the year prior, like kids weren't afforded to use that because these fields were being rented out to entities outside.
Sure.
So now you strip the kids of the community even more so.
Yeah.
So you go through the town, is there a town rec, or do you go through the town specifically to rent like the Hunter Field or something and things of that nature?
Again, I that's more, the president handles that situation. I don't know exactly, but I believe there's a standing reservation for Hunter Road fields.
And in the past, and maybe this has changed, and maybe maybe you don't know, but when the town of Durham, or the players of Durham, have tried to reserve the Hunter Road fields in the past, they were denied.
Yeah, I wish I knew. I really
Okay.
don't. Again, I'm coming into this kind of green, so,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, your primary motivation is more about giving Durham girls the opportunity to play some of their games on this field. It's not as much of just a pure capacity.
oh, it's both for sure. But my primary definitely is to support the girls to be able to play on the softball field that they grew up playing on. And yes, capacity is definitely a problem. The fields over at Hunter Road is 1 softball, 2 baseball. They play baseball on the softball field at middle school, so I don't get to use that for the softball side. That leaves me 1 field, and that's why I was hoping to get the Durham softball field, and I reserved that. Otherwise, if we don't get use of the Eureka field or the Durham school field, we're having 2 teams of practice on the same field. And I don't know how I'll work that out. I'll figure it out, but
Right.
it's definitely a capacity piece as well.
Okay.
But my primary reason is the Durham players.
I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this or anything,
Absolutely.
but may I just ask if the capacity was limited, why'd you take on more players?
We welcome any players, and also if you I don't know if you know, but the Freeport Middle School does not have a softball team.
I'm
We-
aware.
Yeah,
I think that's
and
unfortunate.
it's sad. It really is. I want to grow this program the best I can. Unfortunately, over the past 5 years, there wasn't a lot of eyes on it, and so it dwindled. And I think both the middle school and high school teams are suffering for that reason. And so my primary focus is to try to develop softball in the 3 towns.
Well, that's appreciated. It definitely could be. I'm a big softball guy at heart. Most of these guys, these baseball guys know that, but I've also coached baseball also. But you're right. There's been an issue, and there's also been a lag over there in terms of, and some of that has been, quite frankly, I don't want to speak out of term here, and I'm not trying to get.
Absolutely.
Durham was never welcome.
Mm.
It's been tried, and sometimes the kids they're shunned basically to say, hey.
That's a shame, and I'm here to change that. To be honest,
Okay.
I don't understand why, and it doesn't make sense, and
Well,
it shouldn't happen.
You know why? It's always an issue with parents. It's not the kids. The kids suffer, but the issue is the parents. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. And
I'm a peacemaker,
and I appreciate that. It's a tough job. It really is. Anybody who stepped into that, whether, and thanks for Mike for doing that and yourself, and because it's a thankless job, and it's mostly just constantly heat more so than praise. And what it should be is praise what you guys do. So,
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Yeah. Are you okay with other?
Yeah, no, sure. Like I said, this is kind of a workshop thing, so anybody that's.
So my name's Tim Keeger. I live on Bully Hill Road. I've been a coach now for 3 years. Dave's done a good job running the softball program for Durham softball, and I appreciate all the work he's done with that. Mike's a coach too. We've all been a coach. We've all put a lot in there. The whole purpose one of the decisions why I went to it, Matt and I had hours of conversation prior to moving, is nothing against what Dave was doing, because Dave did his job, but the little league that the girls were playing in Androscoggin County was a mess. It was, you'd go to their field, you played by their rules. It was not a good organization. The Tri-Town, while some of us were, we want to stay Durham identity based and be Durham itself. The infrastructure is way better. We've had clinics. We've already had, we're doing clinics year round, or pretty much year round.
Yep.
Fall baseball, summer baseball, secondary postseason, all that stuff was available with the Androscoggin Little League. It was 6 weeks. You had your first practice the week before the end of April. Your first game was the last weekend in April, and you were done June 16th. And it was 7 teams all fielding that field 6 days a week. And even occasionally on a Sunday afternoon, it was a pickup. So we had reservations joining it because we didn't want to lose identity of that field. And Matt gave his word to us that he was going to fight like hell to make sure we needed that field for them to work. So we all went there with that idea of, we'll still have it. We got other parents on board of, hey, this is a great program. They've got winter skills programs, winter clinics that we're doing right now, and even a secondary clinic that they're doing Thursday nights with the RSU. So it's a better organizational infrastructure with a more supportive league. Again, nothing with all the work that Dave's done with everything he's done. I can't thank you for giving our kids a great opportunity.
This work has been done before. They decided they didn't have the resources to maintain the program they created.
Yes, but that's not, but it's the thing is we wanted to get out of the league. We wanted to get out of the Androscoggin League because it wasn't a good program for the girls.
So we're not really here to get involved in this league or that league. Our role is, we have a field.
Yep.
We have 2 organizations that are asking to use the field. I'll speak only for myself, but I think it's probably true of other board members too, is what's in the best interest of Durham kids is ultimately what's going to drive at least where I come down on this. I don't care about if it's a Durham league or a Freeport league or Androscoggin or Cumberland County. I personally don't care about any of that. It's what's going to be the ultimate best end result for the kids. And unfortunately, it's there's some group of Durham kids, one way or the other, is going to come out on the short end here, right? Because if you go one way,
Right.
you've got Durham, baseball kids benefit, but the softball kids don't. And if you go the other way, it's the other way around.
And you're going to also have those kids that are in the T-ball with the Durham program that once they're done with T-ball are going to have to get shoved somewhere else as well.
Yeah. So one question I have, and I I mean, it would open up logistical challenges and it might not be realistic, but, if they were, you talk about the opportunity for girls to play on that field. And, is there an opportunity to share the field if practices are not part of it? Like if we're just talking about playing games on that field and like the field was reserved for games and you guys could figure out, okay, on, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's baseball, and on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, it's softball or some other thing. And you guys can schedule games there. But, practices, you figure it out somewhere else. I mean, it's just a thought, it's just an idea to maybe kind of.
I used to, when I coached, and I've coached softball for many, many years on many levels, including the high school all the way down to, I've coached the middle school team. I've coached for Dave. I coached Kevin's kid, actually.
She doesn't play anymore.
She doesn't play anymore. She's a great kid. Damn, track, Freeport kids. So, to Kevin's thing, you play the games there, right? I mean, that's always in the past, even with just softball, you couldn't have a practice. I used to personally on my own time would contact Beaver Park in Lisbon and bring the kids over there because there is no way in this town to have practices and games and things of that nature. And that's the bigger problem here is that the kids are suffering because, whether it's Freeport or this town or more so Pownell. I mean, what does Pownell have? Nothing. We haven't created infrastructure for kids in the recreational department. But I think one of the bigger issues, well, I'll save that for next week, I guess.
And when you're talking about just the game situation, it was that way even when it was just Durham softball. The only night available for practice was literally Friday.
Oh, really?
Because Saturday, everybody played. It was 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. I'd get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, prep the field for our first game, and then try to clean it up so, the next set of kids could go.
You're talking softball right now,
Yes,
right? Okay.
yes, softball. So softball, it ran, we had 2 games a week, and we did, what did we do last year? Was it Tuesday, Saturday?
Softball, we have games Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights, and then practices would be Thursday, Friday,
and
then
Saturday.
games on Saturday. So what it really comes down to is there's 60-ish girls that played Durham softball last year, and now that there's no Durham softball, those same 60 girls are playing Tri-Town softball. So where do they play now?
5 teams.
5 teams, yep. 2 U8s, 1 U10, and 2 U12s last year.
To Mike's point, I think, those girls came over to Triton. They're still Durham girls. Just because they changed.
No question.
Okay.
I think everybody recognizes that people in your organization are from Durham, but you also need to recognize that the program that's also requesting the field is 100% Durham.
Yeah.
And it's an
For sure.
organization,
Absolutely.
a nonprofit organization in the town
Yep.
of Durham.
Yep.
So,
Things had gone differently in January, there'd still be a Durham softball.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't want to get into the weeds of the Durham softball thing because that I can feel the tension without even. I'm sure, but I mean, like to your point, if you guys don't like the organization, like the Androscoggin League or something, well, join another one, I guess. But I mean, that exists on all levels, whether it's little league or softball. Hell, I've even seen the middle school level where you go there and there's different rules. Okay, that's always going to exist no matter what organization you join. It depends on whose home court you're on.
Mike, were you trying to get something in?
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, if a decision is made to leave the town to join a different organization, to then say, well, the infrastructure isn't there at that organization to support it, so we need to go back to our town for that infrastructure. To me, that's not right, especially when, I mean, admittedly, 60% of their kids are non-Durham kids, and we're 100% Durham. I mean, that's what I would ask the board to consider. We're all Durham taxpayers in our organization, and we want to stay in Durham. Our kids want to play in Durham. Plenty of our parents don't want to go down to Freeport to have their kids play. And I feel like that's
45% of 300.
that's what we're hearing
That's more
from
than
softball
120, right?
as well. Like they're
So
now part of that, but they want to come back and still play here. And you know, it's unfortunate. It in fact affects my daughter too. I mean, she's a softball player, and you know, it's unfortunate what happened, but
Yeah, you got me in the middle here. My kid's a softball player. My son plays baseball. He signed up to play for the Tri-Town. I mean, I'm right in the thing, but it's just, it's a quagmire. I wish there was, again, 98.9% of the times in my tenure in sports, as far as these schools, this issue doesn't reside with towns or fields. It's a parent conflict, and it only affects the kids. And when parents start looking for their kids rather than their own personal interest, these things go a lot better.
All right, so any other questions on the proposals from board members? No?
I just want to see the lease.
Yeah, no, that's part of the follow-up, is to review the lease,
The
for
lease
sure.
and then how the whole funding thing
In
works.
fact, Jerry, I think it would be worth having the town attorney review the lease and see if he has an opinion on whether, whether the lease is still valid, given the state of the organization, and two, if it is, do they have the authority to essentially sublet or whatever the term is, sublease it or whatever.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, Kevin, though, is, I mean, the real question, and maybe only Dave can answer that, maybe he has his filings done, is that organization still an organization? Is it still?
Yeah, I think that's one of the questions.
Yeah, so I don't, if that's the case, I don't know how you pull somebody's lease. It doesn't matter what they're doing.
Well,
They have
that
a
might be
lease.
true, but I think we should get the attorney's opinion on that. Because I don't know that for a fact.
I mean, if I rent you a house just because you don't want to live there anymore, it's
It's
still hold the
actually a
lease.
pretty common thing in a lease that the lessee does not have the power to sublease.
I'm not talking about a sublease. He's not asking to sublease. He's just letting people use the field that he leases.
No.
He can have company. He just can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, if it's not a.
I know you pretty well. This
So
is-
I mean, that might be how what ends up happening. So I don't know, but let's
Get the lease.
let's get the.
Hey, Rich, can I represent maybe like a third group here just for a second?
No, we're only taking two proposals.
What else you got? You got the Durham pickleball team or something that wants us to?
So like, it's kind of this weird one for me because as a Durham resident, I have one boy who wants to do baseball and 3 girls who want to do softball. So I'm kind of like 75% on one and 25% on the other. Obviously, the ideal view in my eyes is can we just work out an arrangement where everybody can share? Can everybody just get along? That's like perfect for me because I'd like my girls to be able to continue to play here. I'd like my boys to play here. So as a parent who's kind of walk in the middle, that's one. You know, from the baseball side of things, I definitely respect that, condition of not having enough field space. With all the players that you guys have had, somehow you've been able to make your league work pretty much entirely with just what is right over there, which is not enough, and your program has grown a little bit. So this is a great chance to kind of, hey, can we get our foot in the door and get some time at Eureka Field? It makes perfect sense. Also, on the softball side, you got like softball had entirely used up every minute of this field last year from every single Durham girl, and with no wiggle room whatsoever. And all those same girls pretty much all have re-signed up again to play this year, albeit from a Tri-Town entity, which is not a Durham entity. But to me, it's the same because they're still playing with all their same friends. They're still playing with all their same grades. Matt's done everything that I think that he can from that position to like make everyone feel welcome. When I first moved, so I was in Freeport for 3 years and moved to Durham. And I always heard 4 or 5 years ago that Durham, that baseball and softball, oil and water, fighting over this, fighting over money, fighting over fields. It was this thing that some of you may have all lived. I didn't. I was a part of that.
You're right.
And it seems like there's definitely still that heat left from that prior generation. It would just be awesome if somehow we could start anew. And our kid, if we all want to be part of this for 5 or 10 years, we're all gonna have kids. Like, I just don't want to be part of the parents that kind of ruin it for the
It's
kids.
always the problem.
So they do need more field time than they have now. Softball can't completely lose the field 100% because then the girls have nowhere to play. this is kind of personal for Dave. He did everything, ran that thing single-handedly. I hope that I get the feeling from you, like that this is kind of like more personal. I know you don't have kids in the program. Just whatever it is, like make it, and I don't want to sound cliche, but like think about all the kids, take the parent personal side out of it. Let the kids play with their friends. I'm sure there's a world where, you can look at the field time and say, okay, you have 60 of the 100 players, you get 60% of the field. You have 40 of the 100 players, you get 40% of the field. Sit down with a pen and paper, map out a schedule. It's only for a month and a half. I think we can get along for a month and a half.
I don't know, you
just
said.
So you guys, I'm gonna put the kibosh on that right now, because you guys, this is not the forum for a personal conversation back and forth. You guys can have that.
We're working through it.
Yeah,
It's a
you can
work
work through it outside of this meeting.
Sounds
So,
good.
but the only thing I would say is that, it would be great if 2 weeks from now, when we're gonna talk this through and vote on something, if you guys work it out on your own and come to us and say, we have a cooperative agreement and this is what we're proposing. I think that would be great. But in the absence of that, and then depending upon what we find out about the lease or whatever, then, we'll have to, probably do one or the other. I do have one question. Is the baseball program, is that all boys or is that co-ed?
It's technically co-ed. I mean, our T-ball is boys and girls. We've
Okay.
had girls that have opted to play baseball right up
My
through,
kid did.
other than softball. I mean, I had a girl on my team with my oldest son, Landon, that played right up through. She was 12 years old. So yeah, I mean,
So
we
it's
certainly
mixed.
don't exclude,
It's
yeah.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to make sure we didn't
My
have
daughter
a
played there.
boys,
Looking
girls
for-
element to this as well. So, okay.
One last thing, if I could, just in addition to, just kind of one last argument for baseball. In addition to us just being purely Durham, as I mentioned, what I did hear was that Tri-Town and Freeport does have access to, I think I counted 5 fields, maybe 5.5, if you count Durham Community School now, to us having access to 0 to half of a field at the Durham Community School. So I feel that that's important to take into consideration too.
To that point, Tri-Town is much larger with many more players. Our softball program is almost the size of, I think, Mike, what did you say yours was? 120 or 114 if you count T-ball. So our softball program is the same size as their whole program, and our baseball program is easily twice the size. I think we're well over 300 now. And to Mike's point, I'm all about, we can work something out. I feel like we can, to your point, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, every other Saturday, twice on Sundays, whatever. I'm willing to work. I just want to make sure that the girls do get a chance to play on the field they grow up playing.
Okay. Any other final questions from the board? Okay. Guys, thank you very much. And
Thanks,
ladies,
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Trust me.
I wish.
Stuff to do?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're just getting warmed up.
That was just the appetizer, buddy.
All right, next on the agenda, Alan, Code Enforcement Officer. Sorry, what?
Judge said it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Alan, how we doing, buddy?
Good enough.
Good enough.
That's fair. You guys all have copies of your
Yes, thank you.
packet? If you don't have it, I have one.
Just on a 2-second pause for Joe. Slowing down at all?
Yes.
Building permit wise a little bit?
Yes.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting ready for it to ramp up again.
Grant, what?
Getting ready for the ramp up again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, other towns are ramping.
Yeah. It's that time of year. I hate mud season. The worst time to build
It
a
is
house.
the worst time.
It is the worst time.
March has become the best ski month
I ski this past week.
of the year.
It's fantastic.
Mount
You
Maybach,
did $35.
there's some good deals out there too.
That's hard to beat. I love that.
It is, it is. I just bought our passes for next year.
At Sunday River.
Yeah, Sunday River Sugarloaf. We spend more time at Sugarloaf now than we do. at
I've never
Sunday
been to
River.
Sugarloaf.
Oh,
I hear. Just haven't been there.
I miss the Mount Abram days though.
I love them. I was there last weekend and I was
miss
like,
that.
I like this place. They got a better beer selection now. I mean, it's-
Yeah. Okay, so we're back in session. So our code enforcement officer, Alan Plummer is here. People may remember that at last year's town meeting, we put in an ordinance that we basically broke a bunch of fees out from various places in the ordinance, and we're gonna put it in a single fee schedule that the board will approve, have the opportunity to approve annually. And Alan has recommended changes to the fee schedule for us to consider tonight.
All right, so first thing up is there's a correction on page 3 of your packet where it says instant entrance driveway permit. That should not be $100. That should be $50. Okay.
I wondered about that
I don't
one.
know how
Where
that snuck in there.
maybe
Maybe I
you
was
were
having a
like
bad day.
average or below, and all of a sudden he's like, whoa,
Say, yeah,
got something against driveways.
you had a,
And I don't even do
number
that.
in mind.
Calvin does all that stuff, but anyway. So I do have a couple tidbits before I get into this packet. First of all, I want to bring to your attention that reinspection fees are already a part of the ordinance in Durham for failure for failure due to code violations. That's already a part. The reinspection fees are, first reinspection fee due to failure is $50. Second reinspection fee is $100. That, to my knowledge, has not really been enforced.
Where are you?
Where, yeah,
I'm just talking to you.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought you were referring to
Couple
Paul
tidbits,
Warmbley.
right, a couple tidbits.
Okay.
So outside of that, so there is a reinspection fee in the ordinance already, and that is $50 and $100 for first and second reinspection. So I have done some reinspection fees since I've been here, but I haven't done a lot of them, but I could have done a lot more. And what happens is people call me for an inspection, especially contractors, and get me to look over their work. And I frankly don't have time to do that. I'm happy to go and inspect and make sure everything is up to snuff, but when they do it time and time again, that's a lot of time. So I'm just gonna let you know that I'm gonna start enforcing the reinspection fees.
The only thing I would recommend with that is that you start providing an upfront communication when you issue the original permit that says, just so you know, we're going to start,
Yeah.
so that it's not a surprise.
And I've already started that through word of mouth as I talk to people.
Alan, is this, when you say reinspection, they're calling to do a final for occupancy and you got to go back?
Yep.
So if they're calling to do a final, they're not, I just want to make sure they're not calling you like, hey, we got half the house framed and we got some sheetrock up. Can you come by and let us know if this is, or is it, they're calling
Here's
for
an
a final?
example.
Okay, thank you.
Contractor
Yep.
calls me up for building, I can't get too specific. I go to look at this house and they've called me and the ground fault interrupt circuits aren't by the kitchen sink. It's a very basic, it's
like
very
not
basic.
installed at all.
They're regular outlets. They're not GFI protected. So anywhere within 6 feet of that. So that this is a contractor and they did all of the work. They've done all of the work. They had an electrician come in and do the work. An electrician, master electrician, do all the work. And those kind of things are blatant, really not great things for a contractor. And they're a GC. They're looking at this stuff and hiring people in to do all that stuff. They're in charge. They should look at that stuff and say, yeah, we're all set to get a certificate of occupancy. Come on over and we'll do this stuff. So when I have to go back over 2 and 3 times, that's odd.
You don't catch something like that on like a rough end
The
inspection?
outlets
with
aren't
the-
in.
Until they're just wired, it's just pre-wired.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rough wire.
So you fail them at that point? How does that?
That would fail. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Can't give them a
Well, no, I get that, but is there I mean, I guess I'm talking like a formal failure. Do you give them a piece of paper and say,
I won't give them a certificate of occupancy unless they can occupy the building.
Yeah.
Period. Because that's what that says.
right, so they're calling you over the occupancy permit. You walk in, there's no outlets. They're correct. And you're at that point saying, I can't give it to you, but what is it that we give them indicating that that was a quote unquote failed
I
inspection?
can write that on the form. Generally, I don't. I make a note on the form saying, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this needs to be done. And I'll go back to another inspection when those are all done.
Do you document it for yourself though?
It goes in the file.
Okay, so you have that.
So you know that that's what
Yep.
you're going back for.
Right, that's,
That's
yeah, I know where you're going.
That's where I'm trying to get to, is like, how do we keep track?
And
of
that, you know, unless things have changed, that's been a normal process since I was building houses.
And it
That's-
sounds like it is, and it's even in the ordinance, but it hasn't really been
No one's done.
executed that way.
Now, with that said, I mean, there's a lot of towns like, I won't mention any names, not this one, but it's not uncommon that a lot of towns won't give you an occupancy on the first route. So they do have to come back. And I've probably built in 9 different towns. I've never been charged a reinspection fee. If I got hit on, let's say stairs, because they're easy. It's not an electrical. It's just, that is the main carpenter. He's the thing. One's a 1/4 inch out of compared to the rest of them. It's stair geometry is always biting people in the butt. Redo the stairs and I'll be back. Let me know when they're done. But it's never been, hey, you got to pay another fee.
Yeah. Well, yeah, well, I mean, I think we heard from the town that they want to make sure we're collecting fees that we can, you know, in an appropriate amount.
Yeah, I no, and I understand. I agree with that 100%. I agree with that. But there's some things like carpenters not always are codes guys and so forth, and they're relying on a codes guy for an electrician that they hired. Yeah, they might be a general per se, but that doesn't necessarily give them a plumbing license or something of that nature. So if a general who builds a house gets hit because that's a 22 and it should have been a long 45 on the plumbing, he might not know that, but a code officer is going to know that, and a plumber is going to know that, and you know, ultimately or better yet, a homeowner does his own thing and he comes back and he thinks he's ready because he can do it.
That's different.
See, that's right.
That is
That's
different. and I get that, and I really try to be reasonable
sure.
and use logic.
Okay,
That's
as
my
long as we're
job.
being reasonable. I mean, that's
So,
really the
What
point.
percentage?
Here's another. It doesn't happen very often,
Okay.
but the people that it's happening with is egregious.
Regular?
It's like, oh, come on.
Like the same.
went back
same
3
people
times.
over and over?
For insulation.
Todd.
So I came to do an insulation inspection, and I went back 3 times. The second time I went back, the vapor barrier was open, insulation was exposed in a heated room, and they had taken a triangular piece of plastic and stapled it to a stud. And I said, "You're kidding." No, okay, you're failing again. You can have them come back and do that over.
Sure.
Because it's the code. It's the code. It's minimum standard. 'Cause the code is minimum standards.
Right.
So when they put that piece up there and just stapled it to a stud, they're not trying. They're seeing what's going to happen
I agree.
when I come back for a 3rd time.
Yeah. I agree with you on that.
So I'm really not even asking a question because it's part of your ordinance now.
Right, you're not proposing a change in those.
I'm
fees.
just
I didn't
saying
see.
I'm going to start enforcing that.
I
And
just-
it's going to be for those egregious things.
Yeah.
When a homeowner does it, I always go, "Oh, okay, I'm coming to look at your inspection, and I'm going to tell them things that they need to do." If I have to come back repeatedly, yeah, I'm going to charge them an inspection.
You
Because
just,
it's taking my time up.
you just have to make sure, and I'm sure you will, but just make sure you're on solid ground. Because if you're gonna be subjective about it and not like always do it or never do it, if you're gonna do it based on in a situational basis, you just gotta be careful that you're not leaving yourself open to, well, why you charge this person a late fee, or a re-inspection fee, but not this other person.
They'll all
That's-
talk.
You
They'll all
gotta
talk.
watch out for that.
I can't speak for Josh, but one of my attorney's biggest things that he's constantly nailing me on is there's nothing worse than having a policy and not following the policy. So if
Yeah.
it's been in the policy and then we're only going to choose to enforce it when we choose to, that's not a good policy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does that sound like you're? Because I get that from my attorney every week.
If it's there, you do it for one, you do it for all. That's kind of where I'm at, but I do think, the communication
want
piece
to
is
do that.
important. I would start
I've
with
always done.
any new permits issued. I would actually have
I can put that on
an
the
informational
permit. I
thing,
can
or
actually
even
put that
on the
on the permit.
permit, even better.
Yep.
So that.
That's it. If it's in the policy, you can't be subjective of when the policy is going to be.
Yeah.
It has to be either policy or not policy.
And then just the over communication. You can't over communicate enough.
Well, you can, but it's
You can,
still
but-
cold water sometimes.
Okay.
But that might,
All right, okay, so let's-
that might help solve your problem. Yeah.
Right, yeah, a couple of reinspection fees, I think
Yeah,
that'll
That'll
change.
that'll
So second thing is double fees for starting work before the permit is issued already in the ordinance, but I've seen no evidence of enforcing that to date. So same
I
thing,
was thinking.
people are doing work, they're not getting a permit, and I'll see it and go, hey, you're building an addition on there. Yeah. Do I need to do something about that? Well, yeah, you do. You gotta get a building permit. So those two things
Yeah.
haven't really happened, but they need to start happening.
And I would say, like, if it's in the ordinance,
Policy's policy.
that's, the ordinance is what the town has decided. And so we're charged with enforcing the ordinance, whether we like it or agree with it or
I don't like half ordinances. I think most people know that. But if it's policy's policy,
Right.
nothing worse than having a policy than not following the policy.
Okay, great. So now to the packet. And these are, what's happened is George Sabers, the planner, has given me lots of information, and that's included in this packet. So you have two things, the example house and what that example house would cost in the different local local towns. So
Yes, that one. Hit the back of that one.
we're on
Page six.
page 6, yep.
Thank you.
So page 6, that's an example
Shoots all
home and
of
what would happen in those different towns for their different fees. And the next page, page 7, says fee comparisons. So Durham, and these are roughly their fees listed out there. So you have that stuff that you can peruse. I hope you already looked it over because you've had this for a while.
Yep.
So the first change, I wanted to say something else. I'm just bringing this information to you based on what I have for experience. And at this point, I've been a code officer for 4 different towns and the information that George just provided. So it doesn't matter to me what you guys pick. It's completely up to you guys. So if you have questions, I can answer those for you. But it doesn't matter to me what you guys decide. So first of all, building permits. So right now we charge 25 cents for new construction, a square foot. I'm going to propose 40 cents per square foot for construction. And that is to include actually, and this is a little different, for anything that adds square footage to the property, it's a new construction fee. So right now, our ordinance says, if you build your house now, there's new construction fee for that permit. And later you come back in a year and want to build a garage, that's not a new construction fee. That's a cheaper fee.
Mhm.
So you get cheaper if you build it a year later, as opposed to when you build it new construction.
Okay.
Typical.
But if that's what the
I was gonna
ordinance,
say.
but if that's what the ordinance says, that's what we need to do.
Okay.
Right, we're proposing fees, we're not
Yep.
proposing
Yeah,
ordinances here.
So you guys need to look at stuff like that. That's very unusual. Anytime in other towns, if it's new construction, you're a new construction fee for that.
And
Oh, yeah. Well,
That may very well be 100%. Yeah, I don't doubt that at all, but
Right.
if the ordinance says something different, it doesn't matter.
It's not a fee. Gotcha. So then you can cross out the second part.
I would
under
flag it to
renovations.
George and whatever for future consideration of a
Okay.
change, but yeah.
that's just real quick, Alan, is it the fees that he has on page 6, are those the new represented fees or is that what it is today?
That's what it is today.
Okay, all right, so this new proposal would up that
Yep.
by.
So those lines underneath construction, will change new construction so you can avoid, cross that out. You can't do anything like that. And those are specifics about, no permits required for residential cosmetics, alterations such as vinyl siding, replacing windows and all that kind of stuff.
So so in the current fee schedule, it just says residential construction, 25 cents per square foot.
New construction.
You're proposing, well,
Go to 40.
to go to 40.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions about that?
Is renovation the same thing as addition to residential
We're gonna
structures?
cross out renovation because we can't change that.
So you're not proposing to raise the
Renovation.
additions to residential structures from 15 to 20?
You can do that if you want. I would suggest changing the ordinance and making that.
Okay, then all right, so you're not
I would
making
say forget that.
okay, all right.
No ordinances tonight, buddy. We got
Change
enough of the ordinances.
change the ordinance in totality. So next thing, cellular towers. Currently, we charge them an electrical permit fee for any time they do something to a cellular tower. When they're adding things on, when they're adding square footage within the fence, those kind of things. This came up because I had someone call and ask about the fee. And they said, basically, so these are big companies. And they said, the guy I talked to for the company said, you can charge us anything you want. They'll pay it.
That seems really cheap for a cellular tower.
Okay. So right now, we charge $75 if they're gonna put one new antenna on it or 6 new antennas on it with that fee, with that permit.
$75.
75 or 100?
$75. We charge them currently $75. It's an electric permit fee.
Oh,
That's
it's
it.
not a separate
It's not.
cell tower.
Correct. No, it's all on the existing tower. So if they were gonna put a new cell tower, they have to go through the conditional use process.
Right, they have to
Totally
go through the
different.
planning board.
Totally different.
Yeah, exactly.
So, compared to $75, I figured 1 to 5 additions would be $100,
That
and
each?
6 to 15 would be $150. But it's still pretty darn low.
Is that each or is that one?
I need
Per-
$100
per-
an hour
the way this
for
is-
5?
For the 1 to 5.
I don't
1,
necessarily
5, 1,
understand the
2, 3,
definition
4,
of
5.
tower. Once
So
you-
they can
So
put 5
you can-
antennas up.
You
for
guys can always
adding
propose
an
different
antenna.
numbers if that's what you want to do. So that's
Who's
fine.
adding like amplifiers
So
or
but
something
there's
like that.
no, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no cellular tower fee in the ordinance right now, correct?
They call and ask what fees, what permit they should get for changing this tower. And it's been that they get a electric permit.
Right. So so it's not, what I don't know is,
It doesn't list anywhere.
right, I don't know if we have the power to add a fee that's not in the ordinance.
Well, okay.
I don't know. Part of me thinks we might, but I'm not sure about that.
Well, do we, just not a, so we're not, obviously, a new tower, like, that gets me a little confused when we use the word tower for fees, because I mean, we're adding a tower, and I think most people are going to think it's a tower. But this is more or less upgrading, like, we're going 4G to 5G, and we're changing out this little panel on the tower, correct?
Panel, new antennas on the tower.
Right, we're not adding a whole new
boxes,
tower. per se.
Generator.
Right, got you there. So I mean, it is essentially electrical work, but we don't, I mean, just like, I'm assuming electrical, I could be wrong, I haven't run the ordinance on this. You know, a 200 amp panel versus a 500 amp electrical panel in town for like a commercial building might cost differently, correct?
No,
No, not in this town.
current,
Okay.
currently, if you're gonna put in a new circuit in your house, it's
Yes,
$75.
one second.
If you're gonna wire a new house, it's $75.
Yeah, okay. I get that component, but I didn't understand. Okay. So would it be, so if they changed 10 things on that tower, is it $75 per items changed, or is that a one-time fee?
One fee, one permit. That's what they're doing at this time.
So would you need the ordinance to say per fixture for that to change, for you to charge more? Like if they're changing out the whole tower and basically retrofitting this tower to, let's say, I don't know anything about towers, okay? Other than I got some light bulbs in them and I get my cell phone reception, that's about it. But let's just say they have 10 amplifiers on there for 4G, and those amplifiers they want to now change out because everybody's going 5G, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Could the ordinance doesn't allow to charge per, like is each amplifier its own separate entity per se?
I've only done from what's happened previously,
Okay.
and that is charge them a permit, one permit for an electrical permit.
Okay.
$75.
You said that's what was done previously. Is that how you would do it based on the ordinance? If it,
That's how I'm doing it, based on the
But
ordinance.
That's
Based
not my,
on,
that's not my question. My question is, forget about what was done in the past.
Mhm.
Forget about what you did today. If you read the ordinance right now, how would you choose to do it?
you don't need a fee. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading too. It's not, it's really, it's a utility.
So this whole process is kind of, I think the scope is broader than the intent. I think the intent was, well, here's this year's schedule.
Yep.
Cross out this amount, do this amount. We want to increase it. I mean, if there are other ordinance things to be considered, then that's a separate deal.
Okay.
So Alan and George and I have talked about maybe forming an ordinance review committee to look at our ordinances and see if they're,
Oh, we've been doing that for
Lined up.
15 years, man, 20 years.
We don't have an ordinance review committee.
No.
Oh, but the process.
But the process.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I can throw something out there, what
We-
Mechanic
we
Falls
should-
did. Yeah.
but we should, moving forward, we should think about that to look at our ordinances because they don't really.
And I'd like,
line up.
and we should get clarification on the question of, because I was just reading the warrant article question from last year where we made this change where the board could approve a fee schedule. But it references the ordinance language and we'd have to look at it. So I'd like to get an opinion, and it's probably George and Jack talking with Alan and does the board have the power to, for instance, add a fee to the fee schedule that's not otherwise expressed in the ordinance because, and part of me thinks the board will have that power because the ordinance gives the board the power to set the fee schedule, so, but it'd be good to get clarification on that. Because then that could take care of the cellular tower thing and a couple of other things you mentioned.
Oh, there's more stuff coming up.
Yeah, and that may be true, but I think so. This might be kind of a two-step process. So it's kind of like for the fees that we have now on our current schedule, what changes are being proposed, and then if there are things kind of beyond that, that's kind of like a part two, right?
Okay.
So I think maybe for the next meeting, maybe if we could get like just a one-page summary, really simple Excel spreadsheet, there's something like from to for the
Okay.
for whatever or actually whatever
It's on the book.
whatever the new fee schedule is, because we'll want to adopt the schedule as a whole with and then maybe a separate page that summarizes the changes. Like this goes from 25 cents to 40 cents. This goes from $10 to $50. And then the new fee schedule, because that's what the board would need to adopt is the fee schedule.
And then out of that, you'll end up with a list of things that we probably want to consider for our future.
Not out of that discussion.
Well, just while they're going through it, they can, there's some things that need to be separated out.
I think that's a separate, that would be offline work that then would come to the board later for discussion.
That's really what I'm getting at.
I don't think you want to do that brainstorming of, well, maybe we should do this and maybe we should do that.
No, we don't want to. I know Rich doesn't want to do that.
That's not how I want to spend my last board meeting either.
So if I just want to summarize, we should look at what our ordinance says and which allows us to make those changes from 30 cents to 50 cents and bring that to you first.
Right.
I think that was the intent.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
we're, the way the micro macro, then we're looking at this as
Right.
Because we purposely pulled the fees out of the ordinance text and then authorized the board to do a fee schedule. But the part that I'm foggy on is, can you do a new fee, cellular towers, best example, that wasn't even mentioned in the
Considered before,
ordinance before? Or is the fact that the board is empowered to set the fee schedule mean we can determine what's on the schedule or not?
so invent fees.
Create. If you want to use that
Create new
term,
fees.
sure.
Well, that's kind of, I mean, if they're not on the books, we're inventing them. We're creating, or we're
or
creating
we're-
them, for lack of better words.
But there was also the
Or
the
defining
desire to make sure that, that our fee schedule is kind of in line with
What's comprehensive.
what's the norm out there.
Yeah, a modern day fee schedule.
And it
It's all-
might be that what's the norm out there, as we've heard a couple times, is that particular fees that we're missing, that
Sure.
we don't have,
Yeah.
that maybe we should. So.
Cool.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep. So you guys have looked at some of those things though, because I just want to comment on a couple of them. So some are more urgent than others, I would say. For example, the solar array. I know that there's a company that's interested in putting a solar array, large scale, in Durham. And they've been talking to a property owner for at least 2 years. So if you don't have a fee schedule or an ordinance for solar arrays, then you are at the will of what's allowed.
Issue. But,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Right. There's nothing, I mean, we as a board, unless there was an ordinance created, we can't, there's nothing, we're not
Yeah,
creating
I mean,
ordinances.
Correct.
We're powerless. When it
Powerless.
comes to that.
Right. So that's significant. That's coming. And some other ones, like occupancy inspection. So that would go in line, and you could say that one or the other one for reinspection fees. So I don't charge for the occupancy inspection. There's no fee right now at all. But if I have to go back and back and back like that, then the reinspection fee or an occupancy inspection fee specifically would need to be warranted. And I put those things in there because those occupy a large amount of my time. And I don't have the time to do that. I work 34 hours and I do the best I can. But those things that take up an inordinate amount of time cost the town money.
Yep.
So 911 addressing fee, we don't charge for that right now. To give someone an address, I have to go measure the road, get the GPS coordinate, measure, and do calculation as to what the number is for them. It takes a lot of time out of my day to do that.
Yeah. I think the one thing we want to.
I was like, Calvin.
Yeah. One thing we want to, balance here is because it's one thing to be charging a developer a fee that, that is just part of the revenue stream from the property that they sell and whatever. Other things like that are just like a hit to residents, I think we need to balance that. You say, you say there's a cost to the town, but if I'm that person, I say, yeah, but I pay taxes. That's why I pay taxes, so that there would be that service. Right. So I think you have to balance.
Always my issue with the fire department.
I know. It's the same principle, right? It's like, at what point is like kind of a certain level of service kind of part of what you're paying for your taxes? And at what point does it become, that's kind of beyond what you should expect for your taxes, and you need to pay a little bit extra for that. Trash tags is the classic example, right? Everybody gets 26, but if you produce more trash than that, you pay a little bit more, so it's kind of like that. So just something to watch out for in terms of new fees being proposed for things in a justification. Well, it takes my time. Well, yeah, everything takes time, but should it just be considered part of what the taxes are paying for? So.
And I think that's why we've been discussing, looking at all these ordinance.
Yep.
Maybe getting a committee together through George.
Yep.
Because they're a land use.
And I think that's great, but let's get the low hanging
Right,
fruit, like
right.
the existing fee schedule. What do we want to change about that? Let's be ready to vote on that next week.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Good. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, where's my agenda? There we go. Okay, speaking of ordinances.
Yes.
All right, so this can be pretty quick. So we all have the final version of the warrants. It's all the budget articles are the same as we kind of gave our consensus approval to go out on the draft. The business article, I'm going to skip over the same thing for the capital improvement articles. Actually, we'll just go right through it. The ordinance warrant articles, there's two. the first one is, and you kind of heard in the response to the question from the lady during public comment about the resource protection question. The planning board has changed their recommendation to go with the single question. It's basically asking, do you want to put into the ordinance the criteria for resource protection that the town approved as part of the comprehensive plan in 2018? No secondary question. It's just kind of up or down on that one. And if it's no, regroup and look at different approaches for the future. And then the second one is pretty simple. It just is putting out there in black and white. So it requires a town meeting vote approval for the town to adopt maintenance responsibilities for a new road. So those there. Budget articles are the same as we've already been through. The business articles are the same except for the addition of the Article 32, which is the question where we're asking the town if they want to reduce the number of seats in the budget committee from 9 to 7. But other than that, it's the same ones that have been there. So we can take we could, if somebody wanted to, we could have a motion to approve the warrant as presented, but if there are individual things that articles or whatever that a board member wants to discuss and vote on individually, we can do that too.
I read them. As I was looking over, I didn't look for spelling mistakes or anything like that. So that would be my only concern. Assuming somebody else did?
I did.
Okay.
I sent, 7 or 8.
I've looked at that till my eyes were blurry. So.
Yeah.
If you have, I looked at it and didn't think about spelling, but didn't even think about that. I was just looking for content.
So I guess the big question is, as a board, are we, the biggest change is instead of the 2 questions about resource protection, we're at 1. That's really the big change from the last time we talked about this. And so does anybody have anything they want to say or offer about that?
I think it's the right way to go.
Okay.
I'm not going to ask Joe to speak again, but I thought what he said the other week made a lot of sense. And I think it's, for me, the way that I look at it is this was passed in 2018. It's, we either implement it or we come back to the drawing board next year and change it.
Mhm.
Right. So it's, it was passed. It should have been implemented. It needs to be, or it needs to change. And this is the put up or shut up stage in my eyes.
Yeah. Other comments? That I'm in a similar boat, and I've been on, I've been on all over the place on this one, as I learn more and talk to more people. But ultimately what it came down to me is that the town should have the opportunity to vote on, to put into ordinance or not, what they've already expressed in the comprehensive plan. I mean, that is the role of the comprehensive plan, is to provide the framework for supporting ordinances, because comp plans don't have the power of ordinance, only ordinance has that. So if the town says no to this resource protection article, then it's kind of back to the drawing board. So
Yeah, I have my own, which is, it doesn't really matter. I have my own personal feelings about the ordinance itself, and I think many people do.
Mhm.
But what I will say is the way this is written now compared to the way it was written in the past, at least in my opinion, and I'm nobody to really make this as an official, but it's at least an average person can read this. It's not so convoluted that, it's, I'm going to have to call 13 different attorneys and 12 of the 13 are going to give me a different opinion. That's the way I read it in the past. I commend the board, and looks like Joe and so forth who worked hard on this. And I think they did a nice job cleaning up the language compared to where we were at and what we're presenting to the town.
When I was observing the whole process, that's what it came. I mean, it was that we had the 9 lawyers in the room,
almost literally, right?
Literally, and yeah, it was well presented by by Joe Roy during that and the pros and cons of how these were laid out and
Yeah.
why. Yeah, I agree with Josh with the comprehensive plan is there for purpose. This is now the implementation of that plan that everybody already voted on. It isn't necessarily a one-for-one swap as it's been alluded to. It's an application of the ordinance that everybody and the comprehensive plan that everybody's put into place. The state changed their map, yep, and now we're implementing according to how we decide to push the town forward with their comprehensive plan. I say push, the town voted it in
Right.
to go this way.
Yep.
So the town was all in on this, and this does represent that direction at this point, so. It is, yeah, a layman can read this now.
That's me. I speak for the lay people.
All right. So does somebody want to make them, okay, so I raised that. Are there any other individual articles that anybody feels the need to discuss?
Yeah, I read.
All right, so does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we set the 2023 Durham Town warrant articles as presented.
And I will second.
Seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, so we have a copy. We need to sign this copy. Let's do this now, so we don't forget.
Did we sign the wrong one?
No, I got the right one. This one doesn't say draft on it.
My red pen away.
Yeah, you can borrow the black one.
It's bad mojo to sign in red pen.
Oh, yeah, I know. I already get crap about that.
We should get 5 different colors.
Yeah. Okay, managers report.
Okay, well, thank you. Just a couple things. The MMA workers' comp, we did that audit this year for 2022. And we overpaid, so we got a check for $4,500 back the other day for 2022. The audit actually got done in time this year, so just wanted to share that with you. And along those same lines, so on the 22nd of this month, there's a gentleman coming from MMA and risk services to talk to us about basically our workers' comp mod rate, what we can do to bring that down. And what he's going to share with us is different plans and processes that we can have in place to do that, like a plan, policy on lifting, ladder safety, bloodborne pathogens, and just have that sort of stuff in a file.
And our policy.
Policy, and, slip, trips and falls, and just sort of, kind of train our employees on those, have meetings and that sort of thing. And in doing that, we can reduce our workman's comp by, 5 and 10%.
Okay.
On top of hopefully not getting hurt and being out on workman's comp. One of the biggest things is a return to work policy. If you get hurt, but you can come to work and maybe, I don't know,
Light duty.
sort of stuff, as long as you're off the workman's comp rules, that helps our policy to get it down.
Yep.
So it's things like that. And he's gonna actually meet with myself, road commissioner, and fire chief, and kind of talk about, because those are really the three places. And Diana is kind of she's in the committee too. So we do have sort of a safety committee. We meet quarterly and we sort of talk about that thing. So he's going to walk around each facility, the public, the town office, public works, and the fire station, just kind of look around and just ask for, what do you have for policies? How are you keeping track of this and that sort of, just to get us up and going. And once we do, we should start seeing some of our, cost on workman's comp drop next year. We're stuck with what we got now, but that's just a good way to try to help save the town some money. And they're simple, and MMA has all of the example policies. So it's like going in there and changing the town name to Durham.
Yeah.
So what the board will see is once I get these going, I'll be bringing these to to the meetings for you to review, to make sure you're good with them and that sort of thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, and I usually am. But Public Works, I believe, we did this and adopted these MMA policies 4 or 5 years ago.
They might have been, we'll see, because it might have been the Bureau of Labor.
It was.
And they have like, which is part of this. If you're,
It was part of that tier
We
one,
had to do
right?
this,
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
it was
And
part
we
of
had to
this.
do this to get our workman's comp down because it got to a point where
yeah, we're paying 113% more than your average town. So we can we're at 2.13. We really want to try to get that down closer to 1.
And what you're talking
Next
about
couple
is,
of years.
it's what, 3 tiers or something? And
Well,
that's like a subset of tier 1.
Well, the Bureau of Labor Standards has what they call compliance directives, and it's all about making sure that your fire extinguishers have been checked and your stickers are on your ladder and your outlets aren't grounding out and you're not using extension cord. It's all those sort of things that you do monthly to just check, and you just check them off, sign it, put it in the folder. So if MMA comes in here once a year, they'll want to see that folder to make sure that you're doing those
it monthly.
just to keep it.
well, when you mentioned MMA, that's what rang my bell because that's what I thought what we did it for was for our workman's comp.
Yeah.
It was more, it wasn't for the town specifically. It was mostly back then specifically for Public Works.
Yeah.
We have a program that actually it's all, of course, it's online, and you go in, the safety talks get pitched to you, and you have to do them X number of them every month. And you go in and you check the box that you read it and looked at it, and so it doesn't become as I'll say as manual as what you're describing, but it becomes a little more automated and what's that?
Never mind.
Yeah, and I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah,
That
and
next level of we do it daily musters every day for 5 minutes in the morning with into all the teams do it.
Yeah.
Sing a chair. You do a chair like Walmart.
No,
Is that-
we leave that part out.
MMA has something very similar to that where they have online, it's on their,
Yeah.
they call it, I believe they call it their online university, where they have those training programs that you can go and view,
Right.
sexual harassment, all of that
All
sort
that
of
stuff
stuff.
is there, yeah.
And, and we really should be doing that just to keep us in compliance,
Yep.
really, with safety standards and
I
that
think the
sort of
board
thing.
agrees with you. I mean, that's one of the reasons why a lot of the time this board was such an advocate of having someone like yourself represent this town
Yeah.
because of things like this fall into
Right.
the cracks.
Right.
It takes a little time to get there, but once we're there, then it just becomes
You just normal.
habit. You just
Right.
do it. So there's that. So we'll have that going. The other thing is I finally got my notary public, so we're good to go on that. If we
Congratulations.
Nice.
someone.
You didn't bring like donuts and punch to
Well, I know,
celebrate?
right? what I'm waiting on right now is they give you a number, so then I can order my stamp and
Yeah.
then it's on the stamp. And we'll be good.
I'm sure
Jessica won't
nobody's
have to-
happier than Jessica.
Yeah, right. So we got that. And other than that, things are going good. I mean, putting this warrant together, going back a few times with Kimberly and Jessica, and they all work pretty hard on that.
And,
I'll say.
I'm
Really
glad.
good.
So just to touch base, so we're all set on the gym, I'm assuming,
Yes.
and moderator. Is it
Yes.
going to be Bill again?
Bill, yeah.
Okay, great. We need to make sure, and this is always a little bit of a kerfuffle every year. We need to make sure that we're able to project from a laptop onto the screen.
Yeah.
And that we have the ability to get the screen up and down and control the lights in the room and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
It
it's
was
kind
fun
of
a couple years back.
yeah, it tends to be a cluster.
It's one of Kevin
So-
Potter moments in his tenure.
And a while back when I first started, you had said something about at the school, if you're going to do something like that, the background has to be white so people can see it.
Oh no! Well, yeah, no, that was me. So
Okay.
no, actually, it's the other way around. What you want, because that room is so bright at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning in April, that you want your PowerPoint slides to be dark background with white text.
Okay, that's
It's all
gonna change
skylights
things.
in there.
That's going to change things up. I can
Yeah.
disregard
That's
the
an
one
easy
I-
change on
It is.
PowerPoint. You just,
So just disregard the one I got you, and I'll change it for you tomorrow, so you don't
that's
have to-
fine. I'm sure I can change it on my end too, so.
So other than that, things are good.
Great. Anybody have any questions, Jerry? Okay. All right, so consent agenda has the minutes and the warrant. I'd take a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, unless somebody wants to pull something out for discussion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Joe seconds. All in favor? Okay. All right, upcoming meetings. We will need an executive session tonight, guys, just so you know. Upcoming meetings, select board meeting, March 28th and April 11th at the 6:30 PM here at the town office. Annual town meeting, April 1st, 9 AM at the Durham Community School. The day before that is our annual election. That's 31st, right? March 31st at Eureka Center. We're doing it at Eureka Center, I believe.
Yeah, I'll have to.
That's what the warrant says, right?
Is it? I believe Jessica.
We're
she
voting
knows,
at the
she's ready to
Eureka
talk.
Center, not AMVets, Eureka
Right,
Center.
Eureka Center.
Okay. And then the final public hearing on the ordinance changes, resource protection and the roads, you know, we both of them, but I think most of the discussion will be for the resource protection, is March 22nd at 6:30 at the Eureka Center. And that's really an informational thing. At this point, the wording is finalized, it's going on the warrant, it's going to voters. So it's really an opportunity if you still have questions. It's not really, I don't think it would really be worth people's time to be talking for or against necessarily at that hearing, because that vote's at town meeting. And that's when the decision will be made on that, so. Okay, at this point, I will move us into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A for the purposes of discussing committee appointments.
I'll second that.
Joe second.